All right, good morning, Facebook friends. Today we're going to talk about seniors and how to retire without saving money. The number of seniors that are contacting me with respect to their retirement concerns is significant. And so I thought about that. I thought, we need to just have a conversation just geared towards seniors and how you can get positioned strategically. Most seniors that I've talked to, frankly, when they call, I can just tell in the tone and the conversation is their level of hope is really low. Their mindset is, okay, I'm 65, I'm 70, I'm 75. Is there anything I can do? And there's a lot we can do. We're going to walk through this process, but one of the things that I want to share with you, today I'm taking a little bit of a risk. And here's why I say that. Here's the risk. Is I'm going to go through some numbers. I'm going to show you a process, but I'm going to try to keep it so it doesn't get too complicated. And we're going to focus on the key components. And so when I say the key components of how we can get you as financially secure as possible, the scenario I'm going to review with you is very typical of what most of the conversations are like when I talk to people, talk to the seniors and where they are today. So I'm going to share with you how we strategically analyze their situation and how we can get them in the best place possible. So let's go ahead and get started with this. All right. Retirement. Now, retirement's about two numbers. What are my expenses and what's my retirement income? But within those two numbers there is all kinds of choices. When I say choices, lots of options. And the truth of the matter is most people, when I tell them, hey, retirement's about two numbers, they go, well, of course, it's what are my expenses, what are my income? But what they don't realize is within those two numbers is there's all kinds of variables. And because they don't know what all these variables are within these two numbers, in most cases, people are their own worst enemy because they just simply don't know what to do. So we're going to analyze both of these different items as far as expenses. And how do we get your expenses as low as possible? Because the expenses is the bar. The lower we can lower that bar, the lower we lower your expenses, the easier it's going to be to get over it and the better the quality of your life. So we're going to address that, and I'm going to share with you some strategies on how we can get your expenses down much lower than many people believe is possible. And number two is how do we maximize your retirement income? And this is the area that most people are even weaker at than the first. All right, so our objectives, though, is we want income that will never run out. And that is contrary. That's a huge point, but I want you to write that down. With our three key objectives is we want income that's never going to run out. See, most people, when they do their retirement plan with their financial planner, that's not even on the radar screen. That's not even one of the objectives. That conversation doesn't come up. And the reason it doesn't come up is it's like, well, we're going to save. I'm going to save as much as I can save, and then we'll figure out how I'm going to live on it. And so here's my core point with that. That from the get-go, that's the wrong attitude. It's the wrong strategy. It's the wrong objective. It's just wrong. It's going to put you in a tough place if that's where you're starting from. If you're starting with, hey, I'm going to save as much as I can and try to live on it, it doesn't have to be that way, and it shouldn't be that way. And I'm going to share with you strategies on how we can get to this. See, this whole mindset tied to this whole belief system that my financial security in retirement is 100% dependent on my ability to save money in my 401k or IRA it's just wrong. It's not only is it not the best strategy, it's going to put you in a difficult place. And so we'll get into this analysis. We need to show, so this is where I say I'm going to take a little bit of risk and I'm going to get into some numbers because I want you to understand, but we don't want that to be our strategy. If your whole strategy is, well, I've been saving this and I got this in my 401k and my whole plan is to just spend that money to survive, you bought into this wrong belief that the save and hope strategy is the way to go. So that's number one. Number two is, how do we get the lowest possible expenses? So we talked a little bit about that. And I'm going to show you some options, some strategic options on how to make that happen. And then number three, and this is the complicated part, is what is the best asset deployment strategy? So all of you have different levels of assets. Now, there are some people that have no assets. They rent, and the only assets they have are depreciated assets like a car and furniture and that kind of thing. And if you're in that place where all you have is depreciating assets, you rent, you own some furniture, and you own a car, and you have no money saved, there's nothing I or anybody else can do. That is not a good place to be. Now, most of the seniors that I'm talking to are not in that place. They have some assets. So I'm going to take a typical scenario. And when I say typical, this is probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the people. For sure, 2/3 are in this category of the scenario that we're going to walk through. Now, I want you to have a pen and a paper so you can walk through this. Here are some of the numbers that we're going to walk through. So as we walk through this, write down the numbers because it'll be easier for you to follow along. And you can see I have them in 3 columns. Okay, so we're going to go through this analysis, and then we can compare your circumstance. So, but when we compare your circumstance, put them in the same 3 columns. And then if you have questions, you can put them on Facebook, or you can private message me or email me or whatever, and we can get into this in greater detail. Because at senior time, this is game time. There's no more practice. There's no more dress rehearsal. You're at a critical place in life. You can't afford to make financial mistakes. And also, the only way to get into this is we have to get into the math. And I don't normally do that in this show and these presentations. I try to reserve that for when we get together. But you need to see some of these numbers to get some perspective. So let's walk through it. First one. Let's say your home's worth $700,000. And whether your home's worth $500,000 or $1 million or whatever, don't worry about that, because you'll see the percentages. I kind of picked a middle number of what the people I'm talking with are usually in that range of, their home's worth in the $450,000 to $500,000 to about $1 million. So I picked a number in the middle, basically. But the percentages in the formula, this is where most of the people are landing. You have a first mortgage, $200,000. So again, you might have a $500,000 house with $100,000, $150,000, but this is about where most people are, somewhere in this level. So they have a home mortgage of $200,000, which means you take that $700,000 minus the $200,000, so their equity is $500,000. They have $100,000 saved. Now, this could be in a 401k or an IRA or in a savings account, but most of the people that I'm talking to have $50,000 to $100,000 in their life savings. It's somewhere in that level. Some have more, some have $250,000. It's rare. It's not 10% of the time that I talk to people that have more than $250,000. So if you're in that top 10% that have north of $250,000, so that's great. And by the way, I'm not trying to discourage saving. The more fiscally disciplined we are, the better. But the simple fact is the overwhelming majority, like 80% of the people, cannot save anywhere near where they need to be able to retire permanently without having to worry about running out of money. And so my point again is that the mindset that saving money is my salvation is just simply wrong for 80% of the people. It's just not going to happen. It's just fantasy. And the good news is there's a far better way. So we'll get into that. But anyway, so we have $500,000 in equity. We have $100,000 saved. So here's our total net worth. $600,000. All right, so that's the good news. That's what we have to work with. But here's the struggle. Here's the challenge. The mortgage payment's $1,500 a month. That's the mortgage, the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and so on. So the mortgage payment is less because we have a good rate, we have a smaller mortgage. The taxes are less because we bought the property a long time ago, so our property tax bill is much less, and then we got our insurance. So our $1,500 is our housing expense. But then we have more expenses. We have food, utilities, fuel, all the things we need to survive. And this obviously is a moving target depending on your lifestyle and how many people are, as a senior, are you single? Or are there two of you? Do you have family with you still? Because sometimes there's grandkids that come back around, or kids that never stop being kids. So let's call that $1,500. So we have $3,000 in expenses. All right, third bracket is, what do you have in income? What's your retirement income? Now, in our retirement income, you have to put $1,200 a month in Social Security. So your Social Security might be a little less, a little bit more, but that's kind of a median number. And you can see if you were to retire, our expenses are $3,000. If we only have Social Security, we have an $1,800 a month shortage. So that $1,800 a month, if we have 100 grand saved, if we have 100 grand saved, let's say in the bank, and we're getting 1%, well, 1% of 100 grand is $1,000 a year. Divide that by 12, it's like $83 a month. So you can see there, the earnings on it is nothing. Even if you have it invested in some kind of CD or something, or you can have it into some bonds or something, you're going to have a very low return on it. And if it's in the stock market, which has done well the last year, the problem with that is you have that market volatility. We've seen a little bit of hits here the last week. You really don't want to be there if you're in retirement mode. You want to be in a much safer place so that you don't experience a significant hit. So my point is, the savings drain. If you haven't retired, you're looking going, I can't retire, because if I retire, I'm going to have to be hitting my life savings at the tune of $1,800 a month. Annualize that. So you can see we're talking around north of $20,000. $20,000 a year, 5 years, we're going to run out of money, right? Huge problem. So this is why so many seniors aren't retiring. It's like, okay, I can't make this work. What are my options? And that's the point of this show today in the conversation, because you do have options and we can get there. The reason we can get there, I'm going to show you strategies on how we can get there to where we can create a place where you can retire and you can make it work. All right. So here's how we go about getting there. Is, remember, in our process, it's about two numbers. How do I get my expenses as low as possible? And how do I get my retirement income as high as possible? So let's start first off with, how do we get our expenses as low as possible? So if we look at our bills, we have our housing, $1,500 a month, right? We said PITI, $1,500 a month. We have a mortgage of, in this case, $200,000. We can eliminate that mortgage. How do we eliminate it? Well, I'm sure you've heard of a reverse mortgage. A reverse mortgage is a way where you can eliminate the mortgage. Now, it's not going to eliminate your taxes and insurance, but your taxes and insurance are the smaller part of that, because odds are, because you purchased the property years ago. So let's say 1,000 of it is your principal and interest on your loan. It could be $1,000, $1,100, something like that. We get rid of that part of the equation. So now we've reduced our $3,000, just became $2,000. So that's significant. So that helps us, right? But if you look at, we look at the income side, let's set aside, we don't want to be draining the savings. But even though we've dropped our $3,000 to $2,000, if we're Social Security only at $1,200, we're still $800 a month short. So what can we do with our expenses on food, utilities, and those kinds of things. Well, here's one of the factors to look at with that, with respect to your expenses, is how big's your house? What are your utilities? The bigger your house is, higher utilities are going to be. Are you driving a lot or are you driving less? Do you have a new vehicle or a used vehicle? These kinds of things. How fuel efficient is your vehicle? Are you onto an electric vehicle? These types of items to go down, because every dollar matters. Every dollar really counts. So we want to analyze that. But if you have a house that you've been in for, let's say, 20, 25 years, that you raised your family that's got 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms, that kind of thing, your expenses are just going to be higher. I look at, I have a bigger house, and, I look at my water bill. My water bill alone is more than most people's utility bills and water, gas, electric, and water, just that. That's a factor. So you get a smaller place, your utility bills are going to be much less. And so we need to analyze these kinds of things. So we want to get this number as low as we possibly can. So like I said, an easy way to do this, though, is the reverse mortgage is going to be a big reduction. But if we were to do a $200,000 reverse mortgage, okay, the good news is we've eliminated the principal and interest part of the payment. But the bad news is we still don't have the income that we need. We have $1,200 in Social Security. We've got this $100,000 sitting there. We're going to have to live on that. We're at a place where we need, the magic number for us is we need to be about, without a mortgage payment. Without a mortgage payment, we need to be about $2,000 a month. So how can we get to that number? Here's how we start to look at that. As far as we have $500,000 in equity in our property, and we got $100,000 in savings to work with. What's the best strategy of asset deployment? What is the best strategy? And there are many options. I'm just going to share with you one. There are many options. So what I'm about to share with you, do not think, okay, that's the only way to go. It's not. But these options obviously have to conform with what you want for your life. But I'm going to share with you one of the strategies. And what's important in our whole conversation today is that you understand what the questions are, what the options are, what the good and the bad is to each one of these options. But what we want as far as objectives is we want to create retirement income that will never run out. Your Social Security is not going to run out till the day you die, right? You leave, then it's gone. You can't pass that on. We want to create retirement income that's better than Social Security. Not only is it never going to run out, but you can pass it on. And we'll share with you how we can do that. Now, most people, what they're looking at is they're looking at their savings, their 401k, their IRA. It's into the market in some level. When they get to retirement, it gets ratcheted down into super conservative investments. It's hardly creating any income for them. Some people go into an annuity. Here's the issue with annuities. The issue with annuities is annuities are super expensive. And here's why they're super expensive. An annuity is basically, it's like gambling. Okay. An annuity is an insurance company that has created a bet for you. But it's like Las Vegas. How many bets in Las Vegas do you know of that the casino has stacked the deck or the odds in your favor, not in theirs? How many casinos work that way? And you know the answer, none, right? Every casino stacks the deck on every bet and every game where they have the advantage. And the percentage of advantage varies. A simple way to look at it is like on the roulette wheel. You have green. It's not all red and black, right? Why is green there? Because the green stacks the deck for the casino. Annuities work exactly the same way. See, there's no free lunch. The insurance company's got to make money. So here's what they are basically doing. They're exactly like a casino. What they're doing is they're saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your $100,000 and we're going to guarantee a return that you can count on of X dollars. So let's say hypothetically that return is, they say, okay, we're going to give you 6%. That's $6,000 a year divided by 12,500 a month. Better than the bank, right? And you go, well, that's cool. At least it's guaranteed. Well, here's the problem, is that what you're doing is you're basically assigning your money where, now they are in control. All right. And you have the struggles of inflation. Now some, say, well, we'll index for inflation. You got to really read the fine print on that. And two is basically, here's what they're doing, is they're taking control of the growth rate of that. And so they're going to make money. And my core point is not to really analyze annuities into great detail. My core point about an annuity is to know this. They're the casino, and the deck has been stacked so that they're going to make more than you are. They're going to benefit more than you are. And as the years go by, that annuity looks uglier and uglier. And the big reason it looks uglier and uglier, I'm telling you, is because your expenses with inflation and that go up, and the annuity starts to seem more and more paltry. So I'm very anti-annuities, is the bottom line with that. So we have to look at this and say, okay, so where do we go? Here are two of our core strategies, core options that we have. Option one is, do we stay where we are? Now, if we look at where we are, we have a $700,000 property, right? We owe $200,000. A reverse mortgage, basically you can access about 50% of the value. They recently got a little bit more conservative on the reverse mortgage. You can get a little bit more than 50%, but I'm just going to use 50% for math simplicity. So half of 700,000 is 350. So what you can do is we pay off your first mortgage. Now we've accessed 150,000, because here's the big problem that we have in this situation. And as I said, about 80% of the seniors that own homes are in this category. They have $600,000 in this scenario, $500,000 in equity and $100,000 in savings. They have $600,000 in assets, and they're making like next to nothing on it. That's a lot of money to make next to nothing. And that's the problem. And the reason they're making next to nothing is because they don't know what to do. And the financial planners tell them, well, look, save as much as you can. Well, you spent the last 30 years or 40 years and you saved $100,000. I can't do a lot with that. And now that you're in retirement, I got to get super conservative because we can't afford to lose it. And then you're just, stuck. But you're not stuck. So here are some of the options. We've got $500,000 in equity in your property. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, how much of this do I want to use to better position my life? So I'm going to share with you two paths on how we can address this. The first one's simple. Simple path is we do a reverse mortgage, we pay off that first trust deed. Now we've eliminated that. And we have an extra $150,000 to work with. So now we have $150,000 that we can create income with. Plus we still have $100,000 that's liquid. There are strategies. So my point is, you got $250,000. There are strategies of what we can look with, which can create income, that can create investment income that's not going to run out. And there are different ways to do that. Now at that level, at $250,000, given where real estate prices are today, you can't go buy an Orange County house for $250,000 and pay cash for it. And even if you could, you wouldn't want to, because if you'd spend all of it, you'd be broke, right? And where's your rainy day fund, for any needs or whatever. So that's not a viable solution. But there are other investment options within the real estate world that you can invest, where you can create income that is going to grow with inflation, and you don't have to deal with a lot of the downside risk of where if you're fully invested and you run out of money. So so there are options there where we can go with that. But let's say we have this $250,000 and you say, look, I do not want to touch my $100,000. I want to keep that. We still have $150,000. How do we best strategically invest that to create retirement income that will never run out? And that's something I can share with you, because there's many options on how you can get involved with real estate and properties to create this kind of investment income. Next option is we look and we say, okay, if I stay in my house, here's the downside to that is I pulled out, if I do the reverse, I pulled out 150 grand, but I still have 350,000 sitting tied up there, creating no income for me. And my expenses are higher than they need to be because I have a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom house, and my utilities, my water, gas, electric are higher than they need to be. The repairs are higher than they need to be because my house is older. All these kinds of issues. So the next option is we look and say, okay, am I open to moving? Some people, that concept is exciting because it's like, I can move into the perfect life, get into a nice community where my expenses are much lower. It's a senior community. It's a place where the burden of worrying about money is going to be gone finally after 45 years. It's just gone. We can make all of that happen. So let's look at that. We sell the property. Okay? We sell this property. Now we have $500,000 to work with. This is an absolute game changer. But this $500,000 actually is better than that. It's actually more than $500,000. And here's why. Remember I said we have two things. We're focusing on two numbers, right? Number one is what are our monthly expenses? We want our expenses as low as possible. And number two, we want maximum income. Here's what we can do. To take an example, all right, is you have $500,000 in this property to work with, okay? If you were to take, let's say, 200,000 of that, okay, 200,000 of that money, of that $500,000, so it still leaves you 300 left, right? And you were to buy a $400,000 property, and there are a lot of places, especially with senior communities and in different places, particularly some really nice communities in Riverside, that you can buy a nice property for I would say anywhere from about $325,000 to $400,000. You put 50% down payment. We get a reverse mortgage on a purchase for the second half. So now you've secured a home with no mortgage payment forever. So now you don't have the expenses, but we get a smaller place. So we've eliminated our mortgage, like we've done this, but we've also dramatically reduced our expenses, our utilities, our expenses on the property. We can get a newer property. Some of these are in communities with low association dues that take care of everything, so you don't have any of those management issues and those expenses and hassles. But we still have an additional $300,000. Now, if you were to get, let's say, a $350,000 property, put 50% down, that's $175,000. Then we've got $325,000 still available. Here's what we can do with that. So now we've got $325,000, and we haven't talked about the $100,000 you have set aside in savings. What we can do is we can look at investing either on your own or within a partnership scenario where you pick up a rental property. It could be a single family or even a duplex, but let's just talk about something super simple, which is a little single family. That could be in the same neck of the woods as where you picked up your new retirement home. And we can purchase this property either free and clear or near free and clear. Because let's say you have this $325,000 and you bought a $375,000 rental. And you put $325,000 down and you only find it's $50,000. Your mortgage payment of $50,000 can be really small. And so you're going to have a significant positive cash flow on that property. And we do a rent analysis. We look at that and we figure out now you've got a nice positive cash flow of a couple thousand a month, plus your Social Security. So now what's happened is you take that positive cash flow of $2,000 a month, add a Social Security, 12, 13, now we're over $3,000, which is where we want to be, right? And we've got our expenses down under $2,000. So your expenses are now, let's say $2,000, maybe a little bit less. But if we rounded it to $2,000 and we've made this shift, and you have over $3,000 in income. So not only have we solved this problem, but you have some leftover money. You can actually go to dinner and a movie and be retired. These strategies are real. And again, here's the thing I love about this is you don't have to worry about saving money. You don't have to worry about running out of money. You can retire forever and you can live to be 140, and you have two assets and they're going to continue to rise. And regardless of where that reverse mortgage goes, the reason the government cut these reverse mortgages down is to maintain equity in the property forever. Now, there's obviously not a guarantee there, but the formula is designed so there will be equity so that the government will never lose money. My point is the government's never going to lose money, neither are your heirs. And so when you leave the planet, you have two assets. One property with massive equity, because the years have gone by, it's gone up and up in value, the mortgage is 100% gone away, and the home you're living in has continued to go up and it's going to have a little bit of equity. But you've left them in a great, great place. But that's secondary. What primary is we put you in a place where we've redeployed your assets. So we've lowered your expenses as low as we can get them, and we've maximized your income, and it's going to go up on a consistent basis, and you never have to worry about being homeless, struggling, never been able to hardly eat, being a burden and calling up your kids and saying, hey, I can't make it work anymore, I need a room. All those horrible things, because that's happening in a big, big way today. So I hope you've learned some of this. There are a lot of moving parts tied to your personal circumstance. Lay out your outline in these three categories. You want to get some help with an analysis on it, lay it out this way, get us your information, and we'll sit down, we'll talk to you, and we'll help you put together a plan and the best deployment of your assets, so you have that strategic plan so we can get you in a place so you never have to worry about running out of money and you can retire on a permanent basis without ever saving any money. I'm Mark Prather, Mark One Wealth Academy. I appreciate you being here today.